Welcome to When Not Yet Becomes Right Now, the podcast where we dive deep into the moments of transformation, the times when not yet shifts into right now and everything changes. I'm your host, Jen Ginty, and this podcast is all about those pivotal moments in our life journeys. You know the ones, when the hesitation fades, when we take that first step, even if it feels like a leap. It's in these moments that growth and healing begins. Each episode will explore stories of resilience, moments of clarity, and the sparks that ignite real change. From personal experiences to expert insights, we'll uncover how people navigate the complex journey we call life and come out stronger on the other side. Whether you're searching for that spark in your own life or just curious about how change unfolds for others, you're in the right place. We'll discuss the ups and downs, the breakthroughs and setbacks, and how to embrace the right now, even when it feels out of reach. Because sometimes the hardest part of the journey is realizing that the moment you've been waiting for has already arrived. So take a deep breath, settle in, and let's get started. Listener note, this episode includes a brief discussion of a suicide attempt. Please listen with care. Hello, and welcome to When Not Yet Becomes Right Now. Today's guest is Angie Hawkins, an inner glow coach who helps high-achieving spiritual women stop chasing love and approval and start radiating fierce confidence from within. Angie works with women who've done all the therapy, read all the books, and walked the spiritual path, yet still feel something's missing. Through deep identity work, she helps them finally feel enough, loved, confident, and free just as they are. She's also the author of Running in Slippers, a powerful memoir about finding resilience after emotional rock bottom. From skydiving and bungee jumping to moving from Chicago to Hawaii alone, Angie is living proof that courage doesn't always mean fearlessness. Sometimes it's about being seen. Welcome, Angie.
Hi, Jen. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Thank you so much for coming on the show. So let's get into it. What is your origin story?
My origin story, like most people, starts in my childhood. I was raised in a home where both of my parents, among other things, they were very emotionally unavailable. So as an adult, I understand what that means and I have the tools to interpret the situation. But as a child, I didn't have those tools. And the way I interpreted it was that I believed that I didn't deserve to be loved. And as you're probably aware, your beliefs dictate your behaviors, and that draws in certain experiences in your life. So for many, many, many years, I really struggled in my life because I was a people pleaser. I thought that I had to perform for love and approval. I was an overachiever because I thought getting good grades or performing at work, again, was a way to earn that approval. I didn't feel like I was inherently worthy of it. And, there was a long period of life where, I knew I wasn't happy and fulfilled, but it didn't even seem like those things were something that were even available to me. So there were half-hearted attempts to make my life better, but in hindsight, I really wasn't doing much about it just because of that belief that it really didn't even seem available to me or that I wasn't worthy of it. But the first turning point came in 2017. My boyfriend broke up with me, and then my dad passed away. And I was 37 years old, and I had spent 37 years running away from my feelings, which is a form of self-abandonment. But I was in such profound grief that it was impossible to repress or numb my feelings. Like they were just coming out. And I didn't have the tools for emotional regulation. So I didn't feel safe in my own body. It was just a really bad year for me. And when the year turned over, into 2018, I decided, I was like, I'm tired of feeling this way. And I do want to make some changes in my life. And so I was living in Chicago at the time, and I decided that I wanted to move to Hawaii, which was good in the sense that, again, I was like proactively making changes, and I did feel like this was something that was available to me, and I was, having more agency over my life. But it was misguided in the sense that I was still reaching for things outside of myself to be the thing that healed me or made me feel better. So you can't move away from your problems. I moved to Hawaii, and not only did I feel the same way and have the same issues, I developed a whole new set of problems. Because, for example, this was 2018, so it was before remote work was the trendy thing to do. But I was very fortunate because my job allowed me to keep my job and live in Hawaii. However, at the same time that I moved, there was a huge management shakeup, which threatened my role. So the first year that I lived here, I lived in constant fear of losing my job. And again, like, this was a time when remote work was not a trendy thing to do, and there's not a lot of local high paying jobs here. So I just felt like my future was very uncertain. I also had a really hard time making friends, which had never been a problem for me in Chicago. And with any of the friends that I did have being thousands of miles away, it was just a really lonely and isolating experience. And the other major thing that happened right off the bat when I moved here to prove how committed and all in I was, I bought a brand new condo. And about a month after I closed on my condo, a shared building pipe backflowed into my bathroom, and I wasn't home. So my entire condo flooded, which would have been stressful in isolation, right? But with all this other stuff going on, and again, I didn't have the tools for emotional regulation. So all these things outside of me were slowly unraveling. So that became my internal world. And for the next 2 years, it was like thing after thing after thing. Like, my grandma died, there was always something happening. And again, like, because I was reaching for things outside of me to make me happy, and the things outside of me were not going well, it just became like this, like the metaphorical, snowball building momentum going down the hill. And then COVID happened. So I don't think I have to explain how that exacerbated the situation. But the straw that broke the camel's back was the end of a relationship during COVID, because not only was I at a point, because I think we've all been there, where it's like I just felt like I could not handle it anymore. There was also this layer of sheer hopelessness. Like, nothing had been going right. And I could not see any hope for the future, which is such a dangerous place to be. So I intentionally overdosed on my anxiety medication, and I was unconscious in my bathroom for a day and a half. I was in the hospital for a day and a half, and I was released from the hospital, and I called a friend and I told her everything that happened. And I ended with, "I can't believe I didn't die." And her response was, "It's not your time." And that was so profound, because I was kind of at this crossroads, because I felt worse than I did before I took the pill. So there was still part of me that was like, I don't even want to be here. Why am I here? But her saying that made me realize I am very lucky to be here. And it also just got me thinking, like, I think I do have a purpose, and I want to figure out what that is. So that was my right now moment, because that's when I decided I want to get help. I There was like this glimmer of hope, like, I think it is available to me to be happy and fulfilled. So I hired a coach, because traditional therapy had never worked for me. So it's like, I'm going to invest in myself and get help the right way, and let's see if this works. And it did.
Wow. Wow. So I feel like we have similar, like, kind of stories that move together. The childhood of not feeling like you're able to be loved,
Yeah.
or even, I was told that no one would love me except my
Mm,
abuser. So I get that people pleasing and
yeah.
how it can bring a whole entire life to that moment where you're hopeless.
Yeah.
Because there's always in the back of your head this idea, well, I really don't deserve love anyway,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And that was a huge part of it, because again, the straw that broke the camel's back was the end of a relationship. And it was a very short term relationship, but he was honestly the only romantic relationship who truly saw me for who I was and loved me for who I was. And that was so special to me because that had never been available to me. And again, maybe that's why on the other side, I was like, there is hope because I at least saw that it could happen. But yeah, it's really sad to think that other people influenced our minds that much, that we lived in that way.
Little one learning to navigate their big emotions? Meet My Moody Monster, the pull apart buddy to help kids understand and manage their feelings. With its fun, interactive design, Moody turns tough feelings into teachable moments, giving your child a playful way to express themselves. Whether it's after a rough day or when those big frustrations hit, Moody is there to lend a hand. Perfect for calming down or even just a cuddle. My Moody Monster helps your child communicate their emotions while learning healthy coping skills. Go to mymoodymonster.com to learn about Moody today. Yeah, and I don't think that people going into becoming a parent really think about what they can give to their children. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just so natural to just get pregnant and
Yeah.
then get so excited about the pregnancy or not excited about the pregnancy, like either way, but that you're not truly understanding what needs to go into being a parent for a little one, right?
Yeah.
The things that we do really do affect a lifelong life, so to speak.
Yeah, and that's why one of the things I really like to speak about is creating your own rules for life, because I think society has certain rules, family systems have certain rules, and I do think society is breaking away from this somewhat, but it used to be like you should have get married, you should have kids, like these are the steps you have to take. And like for instance, I don't think my parents were not happily married, so I don't think they really wanted to be married. Um, Based on the kind of parents they were, I don't think they really wanted to have kids, but I think they were just going through the motions of like at that time that those are the things you quote unquote should be doing. So it's like I always pride myself on being an independent thinker, because when you're just like blindly following the rules of society, these are the kind of things that happen.
Yeah, and I did feel that pressure to get married and to have kids. And, with my sons, they're 21 and 19 now, I stress to them on a regular basis, you don't have to follow any specific rules that, quote, society is
Yeah.
giving you. And take your time. Make sure that this is what you want in your life, right? It's about breaking the generational curses that we've taken on.
Yeah, especially at that age, because like this fired me up when I was around that age, but it still fires me up now because we throw 18-year-olds into this situation where it's like, okay, now you have to decide what you want to do for the rest of your life and either go to college or trade school or whatever. And it's like, what 18-year-old is really in a position to do that?
They're not adults. You can say they're adults, but they're not
Yeah.
adults. So yeah, so I think the other thing I really want to talk about with you is that not having any clue about emotion regulation. Because
Yes.
of course, yet again, we weren't taught that because our parents weren't taught that. They don't understand what emotion regulation is. If you ask them what it is now, they would have no idea what that means.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, that totally changed my life because I had chronic anxiety for a majority of my life, which was why I was on anxiety medication, which is another rant I can go on because, I think I went to a psychologist at some point and they were like, well, what prescription do you need to calm your anxiety? Like they weren't really giving me the tools to help it. But anyway, I think I had chronic anxiety because I was conditioned to not feel my feelings. And a lot of that had to do with, again, I understand how my parents are the way they are now. So this is not to criticize them. But whenever I expressed feelings, I was dismissed, it was minimized. And so it didn't feel safe for me to feel my feelings externally. So it also didn't feel safe to feel my feelings internally. So anytime something came up, it's like I didn't even feel safe in my own body. And I lived like that for such a long time. And that was one of the things that when I first hired a coach, that's what he helped me work on, was like actually feeling your feelings. And I am not going to sugarcoat it. It's very, very difficult in the beginning, but it changes your entire life when you can learn to feel your feelings and still feel safe in your own body. Because my whole thing used to be, well, if I have anxiety, I won't be able to handle it. If I am sad, I won't be able to handle it. If I'm depressed, I won't be able to handle it. And those feelings still don't feel good, but I trust that I can handle it. Also, I know it's only temporary. So I'm able to sit in those feelings without it consuming my life or taking over my life. And it just changes everything, because I used to, again, I think I mentioned this earlier, I used to be unhappy and unfulfilled most of the time. Now I'm happy and fulfilled most of the time. And yeah, I have those like moments of anger or sadness or whatever that doesn't necessarily feel good, but I can handle it and I can move through it pretty quickly. And that's what contributes to my happiness and fulfillment, is having that self-trust and ability to do that.
Yes. Sitting with our feelings. I've spoken about this so many times. It is so, so hard and so uncomfortable to sit
Yes.
with your feelings, because they're just, I tell myself now, this too shall pass. But before I was able to even use that little mantra, I would immediately go to work. I would get on my computer and
Oh,
start
yeah.
some sort of project. I don't need to be sitting in anything. I need to be working on something instead, right? Whereas that's not helpful for us in the end. We're just disguising
That
our
is so
feelings,
relatable.
right? Right. I think a lot of people do that. Like, okay, I'm not going to sit here and think about how sad I am. And sadness, of course, is like that really, really, I think probably the hardest to sit
Yeah,
with.
agree. I would rather be angry than sad.
Yeah, and I tend to do that with
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever heard of checking the facts.
Mm-mm.
So it's a DBT skill that I use all the time, because I have secondary emotions. When I have a primary emotion of like sadness or fear, I immediately jump to anger. It's
Mm.
something that happened in my brain when I was little. And I think it's because and
Okay.
sadness, again, you don't want to feel sad. So it was this thing that I would jump from sadness to anger and be that angry girl that got in trouble, because sadness is just too much to sit with.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, secondary emotions are real and they're crazy, but checking the facts basically lets you go back to what happened, and you just take all the feeling out of it. You just write down the facts of the situation. And then at the end of it, you're like, well, what feeling fits this situation?
Mm.
And most of the time, it's not even anger. It's some other emotion that you just don't want to sit with because it feels yucky.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Also, adding on to this, well, it's not new anymore. I learned this several years ago. I think I originally learned it from, do you know who the holistic psychologist is
No.
on Instagram? But anyway, I think I originally got it from her. But basically, you know, a scientific fact is when we are triggered by something, the physiological responses only last 90 seconds. That's a scientific fact.
Ooh.
But the reason why they tend to last longer is because of the stories that we're telling ourselves in our head. So when you're in that moment of reacting, if you can just focus on your physical sensations and get rid of the stories, they do go away in 90 seconds. So that's also a really quick way to move through the actual discomfort in your body when you're feeling the feelings and like ruminating in the story that's going through your head.
Yes, yes. And now you have had, like many people, we've all had multiple life journeys, right?
Yes.
And you chose Hawaii as a new life journey. Just tell us a little bit more about why.
Well, I think it originally started when I was a little girl. I had a Hawaii Barbie and she had hair down to her butt. And I thought that was so fascinating. So from a young age, I always had a fascination with Hawaii. And then as an adult, one of my friends moved here and I would visit her excuse me, I'd visit her every year. And so then being immersed in it, I was like, it was just such an amazing place. And I loved it so much because I'm a nature person. Like you can feel the energy in the air here. Whereas like in Chicago, it's very angry. The energy of the city can be invigorating, but it can also wear you down. So I always loved like how refreshed I felt when I lived in Hawaii. And when after my dad died, he was only 63, and that was a reminder to me that life is too short to not do what you want to do, because in my mind it was always like, well, one day I'll move to Hawaii. And I had all these limiting beliefs as to why I couldn't do it right now. And so after he died, I had just started thinking like, what can I do to make my life better? And again, I think it was well intentioned in that I wanted to do something to be happier and I wanted to do something for myself, but it wasn't well intentioned in that, your environment is only one piece of the puzzle. Because again, like I mentioned, my life actually got worse when I moved here because because I hadn't solved my internal problem. So I was still creating this external chaos. But it did eventually get better. But initially moving here I actually for a long time thought it was a mistake and I didn't think I would be here this long. But part of it was I learned to love surfing. And so I surf now. So I'm like, I can't leave now because I love surfing. But no, I have like adjusted to the culture more and everything. But it is still really difficult because the reality of living here is much different than the reality of vacationing here.
Oh yeah, yeah, I can believe that. I always vacation in Vermont and I'm in Boston, so I'm just
Okay.
like 2 hours away from it. And I always tell myself I can't wait to be the old lady on the mountain that gets to go down to the village and get what I need. But if you really sit and think about it, that may not be like the most comfortable way of living, right? But so what do you think helped you to move forward with? I know you had said that your friend had said it's not your time yet, right?
Yeah.
What did you do after that? What steps did you take when you realized that right now moment of, okay, I got to do something about this?
One of the very first steps I took was I reached out to a coach. And this is someone who I had considered reaching out to before. I had met him at a healing intensive a whole weekend, and he was actually and still is a men's dating coach, but he's not, what is it called? Like pickup artist. Have you ever heard that
Yeah.
term? Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that's not his style. He actually teaches men to basically be better versions of themselves so that they can attract in a better partner. So it's basically like his messages would always resonate with me like, oh, like I would really like that. But I guess that was like my not yet era because I was always too afraid to reach out to him because like he's a men's dating coach. Why would he want to work with me? Also, I think during this time, I know during this time, I honestly didn't even feel worthy of investing in myself. And I know that sounds weird. And I feel a lot of women that I talk to, I feel still struggle with this.
Oh yeah.
And I think it ties in with the like, I don't even think happiness and fulfillment are available to me. So why should I spend any money trying to get there? So I was still kind of stuck in that loop. But then and again, like that comment was so critical. Like she could have said anything. She could have said, like, you're here for a reason, blah, blah, blah. But just like the powerful, you know, is that the word powerfulness of it's not your time that just was, because again, like my mental state was not great at that time, but though her words were so profound that it actually made me think. And it made me realize I think I have a purpose. So the very first thing that I did was I reached out to him and I kind of had this attitude of I have nothing to lose because if he doesn't want to work with me, I'll just find another coach. But I was extremely fortunate that he did want to work with me. And and he never said like, hey, I'm going to teach you how to love yourself. What we worked on was basically changing my behavior patterns. Because again, I had been a people pleaser. So I was always putting my energy outside of myself, but I learned to put that energy within myself. And then over time, I actually started to believe the messages behind that. Like, I'm worthy. I deserve to be respected. I deserve to be loved. So over time, that actually changed my thought patterns. So now the behaviors are subconscious and I don't even have to think about it anymore.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I would love that. So you decided to start working with women, and
Yes.
specifically women who have done it all, who have tried everything.
Yes. Because
Why
that's
did
who
you
I
choose that?
used to be. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so through my own healing journey, because I was working in corporate America and I'm intuitive. I've always kind of known that wasn't for me, but it paid well. The benefits were nice. It was comfortable. However, the universe, like if you don't listen, it will make you listen. So basically, at one point in my corporate journey, I was transferred to this team, and my manager, to put it nicely, she was a raging bitch. And I usually do not use that word about women because I think it's disrespectful, but she deserves it. And I was so miserable. And my knee jerk reaction was like, I'm just going to find another job. But I remember I went on a hike one day because I was having a particularly bad day at work. And I went on a hike after work and I just had this epiphany like, why don't I use my skills and knowledge to actually help other people? Because I was so convinced like there's other women who are where I used to be and I know I can help them. So I just had like this epiphany to be a coach. And it did take several more months to actually gather the courage to quit my corporate job. But yeah, I feel so much more aligned with my life purpose because, and again, I think a lot of it has to do with society rules and family systems. Women think they, have to overachieve and people please and like do these things outside of themselves, but they're not giving to themselves. So there's a lot of women who like are checking off all the boxes and look perfect on paper, but they're not happy and fulfilled. And again, like I'm telling you, it's available to everybody, whether you're tapping into it or not. So that is my mission, to get everyone on board with having hope for the future and feeling more happy and fulfilled within themselves.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. So tell us also about your book.
Yes, my book is Running in Slippers. It's a memoir that covers about a 5-year period of my life. It starts when my boyfriend broke up with me and my dad died. And it basically goes into all the details of everything I described through overdosing on the pills and a little bit about my journey afterward. And it's extremely vulnerable. And the reason I wrote it that way, and I had the idea for the book in the period after my dad died because I was in such profound grief, and we live in a just get over it society. So I would go on Instagram and everyone would be posting about how perfect and happy their life was. And even in real life, everyone would be pretending about how perfect and happy their life was. And I was like, I cannot be the only person feeling this way. So I had this idea to write a really vulnerable book because life is hard. So I'm like, let's write about the shitty things that happen in life instead of all the good things. But at that time, I was like too afraid to put it out. So it was just this idea that I had. But then when I started working with my coach on the very first call that we had, which was just like a week after my attempt, he said to me, if you could do anything and didn't have to worry about money, what would you do? And the first thing that came to my mind was the book. I was like, I want to write this really vulnerable book about like the shitty things that happen in life, because that's what real life is. And then I want to go on these speaking tours around the world so that we can have safe spaces to actually have these conversations. And when I was done, he was like, did you see how lit up you just got when you were talking about this? And I did feel the state change. So, you know, actually implementing change in your life takes time. So I knew working with him, I wasn't going to feel better immediately. But in the first few weeks after I got out of the hospital, life felt so fragile that my only goal was to make it through the day. So I was like, okay, I'm going to start writing the book. I don't have to publish it, but I just needed something to give me a sense of purpose. But as I started writing, I was just so on board with the mission and what I thought it could do for other people that I ended up publishing it.
Excellent. And that will be in the show notes.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. So a woman comes to you, says, I've tried it all. I've tried it. I've tried the spiritual path. I've tried therapy. I've tried everything. How do you start work with that woman?
Well, I'll ask them whatever they're struggling with. So it varies from person to person. But I call it the GLOW method. It's an acronym, but G, it stands for go back to your childhood, because a lot of the patterns that we have in our life. So for example, people pleasing, it's rooted in a pattern that we developed as a child or a teenager to survive. And we just carry that on into an adulthood because, for example, people pleasing or overachieving, even though it's not necessarily a functional behavior, you do get these intermittent rewards from society. So even though a big part of you realizes it's not working and it's probably not the thing to be doing, you're still getting these intermittent rewards that like hooks you into that. So the main part about the GLOW method is actually identifying the root of the problem instead of putting band-aids on it. So we'll identify the root and then it's a whole process from there. But another huge part of my process is, and this is what the L stands for, is light yourself up. Because a huge part of my philosophy is that we're all born with this light inside of us. And then as we go through life, society or family systems or whatever slowly start to dim the light. And we just get so disconnected from who we really were as children. Because if you look at kids, they're like running around and screaming and they don't care what anyone thinks. So there are some quick wins, like right off the bat, because once you start rekindling that inner glow, you can really start to get back to your authentic self. And then O is about overcoming external validation, because again, I think we get wrapped up in what's going on around us instead of actually being concerned about what we want and what's best for us. And the W stands for welcome back home, because I feel like a lot of self-help is geared towards like fixing yourself or changing things about yourself. But really it's about remembering who you were, because you're like born with this light and who you really are, but then your light just gets dimmed. So the whole process is about rekindling that light and shining in who you are.
So after working with a woman for a while, what is your biggest hope for her?
That she has that sense of being happy and fulfilled, because once you have that feeling, it's like all the other things fall away. Like, so for instance, initially in the process, you have to intentionally think about setting and enforcing boundaries. You have to intentionally think about doing things that bring you joy. You have to naturally think about tapping into your intuition so you can trust yourself. But eventually all of that just becomes part of your subconscious script. And then you just have this inner sense of happiness and fulfillment. So you're not even thinking about, what anyone else thinks or what's going on around you.
Oh, to feel that way.
Yeah. And it's super liberating. And it's really special when people finally get to that point.
Yes. How long would you say that you work with a client?
It depends. I usually recommend 6 months, because I think for most people to make a lasting change, it takes that long. It does depend though, because some people have already done a lot of work on themselves. So it just depends on the person. But to make a lasting change, I usually recommend 6 months.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable.
Yeah. And again, there are some quick wins in the beginning, because it can seem daunting when you're like, when I first started with my coach and I signed on for 6 months, it's like, oh my God, but I want to feel better now. But there are quick wins in the beginning. So it's not like you have to wait 6 months to see all your results.
Yeah, yeah. So with all that you have done throughout your life and being a people pleaser and, finally understanding what you want from your life, what would be a piece of advice that you would give a woman who is in the same circumstances?
Well, the first thing I would say is you are worthy, because again, I used to not even think that happiness and fulfillment was something that was even available to me. But once even just changing that mind shift changes everything. Because some of the things that I had to do to get to where I am now were hard. Like, for instance, setting and enforcing boundaries, like not people pleasing, like saying no without guilt or over explaining. Those things are not easy. But once you start inherently believing that you're worthy of self respect, that you're worthy of certain things in life, that you're worthy of that happiness and fulfillment, you're so much more motivated to do those things. And it takes you to the other side where you just inherently feel that way about yourself.
Mm, that's wonderful. Well, thank you, Angie, so much for coming on the show and giving us all of your beautiful wisdom.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Where can we find you?
My website is runninginslippers.com. That I call that my brand. And I didn't mention this about the book.
Yeah.
Running in Slippers is the title. This exact story about how I came up with the title is in the introduction of the book, so I won't give that away. But basically, I live in Hawaii and flip-flops are called slippers. So it really means running in flip-flops. And running in flip-flops is a metaphor for life, because running in flip-flops and life can be adventurous, fun, and playful. It can also be scary, dangerous, and painful. But I also call that my brand, because I'm all about real life and being unfiltered. But anyway, runninginslippers.com. There's information on the book. It's available in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook. There's also information about my coaching program. My current coaching program is called Shine from the Inside. And I do offer free glow up sessions, which is a 60-minute session. We will work on whatever you're struggling with, and we'll work on it the entire 60 minutes. And at the end, I will give you resources for going forward. So, my coaching program is one resource, but it's not a good fit for everybody. So if it's not a good fit for you, I know other coaches, I know therapists. The entire goal of the call is to get you help and get your shine on.
Yes. And that brings up community. That,
Yes.
there aren't, not every therapist or coach is going to be for you, but they may know someone who's going to be perfect for you, or that you may, really like. So it's great to also have that community.
Yes, agree.
Well, thank you again. And everything will be in the show notes. And thank you for just being on the show and glowing.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on, because I think a lot of people they're in the not yet era, and like, trust me, like right now can be right now. You don't have to hit rock bottom like I did.
That's right. That's absolutely right. If this resonates with you, take that as a right now moment for yourself.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you again, Angie.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the podcast. This show is produced by Phoenix Freed LLC, and I'm your producer, Jen Ginty. We hope you found today's conversation inspiring. Okay. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the podcast. This show is produced by Phoenix Freed LLC, and I'm your producer, Jen Ginty. We hope you found today's conversation insightful and inspiring. If you have a story of your own about when a not yet moment became right now, we encourage you to reach out and share it. You can find more information about being a guest on our show at whennotYetBecomesRightNow.com. Remember, you are not alone on your journey, whether it's a journey of healing, growth, or transformation. Every story matters. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time with another inspiring episode.